We brushed last night's snow from the doors, tested the latch with a rub of graphite, and felt the hinge free under our gloves. The cold held steady and clean, making breath small. We set the damper, scraped the spark screen, fed the stove fine splits, and left the kettle with its lid off over the center plate. We shaved around to kindling, checked the axe edge against a thumbnail, and stacked a short row inside. In the pen we brushed frost from the mare's muzzle, chipped her hooves with a pick, and set hay with a measured scoop of grain. We cut 3 cloth flags for the route and tied them to the rope. River fog hung low at 71 degrees, a pale band along the bend. We walked the fence once, then the willow edge, and found a heavy line of prints angling for the choke. We marked the track and set the day around it. The family stayed by the warm wall while we took the cold side. Broth thickened on the stove and a loaf rested under a cloth. We cleared paths to each door, knocked rime from the eaves, and stacked wrist-thick rounds on dry boards. Inside, a pan of snow melted. We portioned fat and tea into tins, wrapped bread, and set aside a measure of salt. We moved through gear in order. Bolts oiled, chambers swabbed, sights cleared of hoarfrost. We relashed the sled, stitched a split along one runner, and tightened buckles that had shrunk in the night. Tarps folded to quick lengths, sinew cord, spare mitts, and a stove firebox plate packed under the front crossbar. We waxed sled runners, taped heel hot spots, swapped damp liner socks, and fitted wool over liners until boots held firm. No pinch, bindings checked. A cracked lace swapped and tied off. Outside, the wind held a hard calm. We tested the radio whistle and the line pull, topped the wood boxes, and confirmed the cache ladder rungs were ice-free. The mare took a warm mash and a chest blanket. The plan went step by step. Travel in wind shadow, skirt glare, count breaths to set pace, and test ice with a pole at every bend. We traced the track on a slate, a long line to the willow flats, then the choke where the river thins, and set our route to meet it with the least heat spent. Cold set its teeth deeper than forecast as soon as we stepped past the wind shadow. A haul strap went rigid and snapped under the first cinch, clean and dry like thin ice. We swapped in backup lacing, retied the load, and set an anti-fog wipe cadence every 30 breaths. Hoarfrost filmed the sights between exhales unless we kept to the count. Fuel sat 1 tin below plan. The southerly crust lied, sometimes holding, sometimes giving with a jolt that bled heat from our legs. Each step was a choice between breaking through to the thigh or skittering across glare that hid seams. We shifted to a breath pace, 4 in, 4 out so sweat didn't soak layers, and started a glove rotation. Wet pair inside the parka, dry pair on. The track bent toward the river where the bend narrows and the snow goes blue. We probed with a pole and heard hollow under the shine. We rebalanced the sleds, moved to a rib of older snow, lengthened the route to avoid a blind dip and cut weight. Spare plate, a bundle of rounds, 1 tarp rolled smaller. Small decisions stacked to keep fingers from whitening and lungs from burning, while the line of print stayed steady ahead. The sign sharpened as the light leveled. Willow tips lay bitten clean in short arcs. A fresh wallow showed where the bison had rolled to frost its coat. The snow churned to dry granules that squeaked under our boots. The stride held long and unhurried. We matched it to our pace and accepted the day would be decided by energy, not speed. The valley pinched into a chain of bends. We stayed in the lee of dwarf spruce and tested spans that had the look of a bridge. Our probe poles carried depth marks. At each choke we set a mark, listened for hollow, and stepped to a rib of older snow. When the route forced us near the glaze, we set a small deadman anchor, crossed single file on the rope, 1 on the line, 1 on slack, 1 watching hands for white, and lifted packs high to keep backs dry if someone went through. At the widest bend, the bison's line and ours converged on the weakest ice. We made the day's one decisive trim. Firebox played out, spare rounds bundled tighter, tin of fat moved forward as ballast, and a tarp cut to lighten and to use as a drag pad. Lead switched to the fresher pair, and the tired legs slid to the middle where the rope support was strongest. Layer work happened between moves, zips cracked open on climbs, shut on flats, damp mitts pocketed, dry on, never listed, always tied to the ground underfoot. By mid-afternoon the prints deepened and spaced tighter. Dung still held warmth and steam hung low from chewed willow. Wind dropped. The river went quiet under the glaze. We were inside the animal's caution now. close enough to see ear flicks in the soft snow at rest spots. So we kept the plan strict. Slow, deliberate, no wasted motion, and every choice aimed at staying dry and holding strength for the next hour rather than this one. Dusk flattened the valley to two tones, hard snow and the low glaze of the river. The bison stood at the bend, broad and still, steam lifting from its muzzle and sliding sideways into the cold. It tested the surface with one forehoof and waited. The glaze sent a low note through the ice. We felt it in our boots. We spread to a rib of firmer snow and set the rope. One watched hands for white. One fed slack with a safety hand on the carabiner. And one tipped the sleds once to keep runners ready. We probed where the shine darkened and measured the hollow. The span would not carry both us and the animal if we forced the angle. We shifted 10 paces right onto wind-scoured sastrugi that carried weight better and settled for the shot. Sling swivel checked. Cheek weld held. Breath cut short to keep the sight picture clear. We confirmed the backstop. We waited for the single angle that spared the river and spared us. On a silent count, the trigger settled. The bison lurched, turned half a step and went still on hard snow, short of the glaze. We stayed set until steam eased and the under-ice note quit traveling. Then we moved together, slow and orderly, keeping the rope line and the rule that had saved us all day. No wasted motion, and no second decision covering for a first mistake. We worked fast in the dry cold. One bled while two quartered. Tarps went down on firm snow to keep steel and hands from sinking. Quarters were tagged by cut and weight, wrapped in tight canvas with seams turned down, then lashed in balanced pairs. We rotated tasks on the count, lift, carry, rest so lungs stayed steady and no one bled warmth through a mistake. Loads moved by relay. Two dragged to the rib beyond the bend while one held position to watch hands for white. Gloves changed at the first sign of damp. We cleared a path with the pole where the crust wanted to fold, pulled the sleds upright once to keep runners ready, and kept a single rope line between us when the route narrowed. One mention, not a lecture. Back at camp, we hoisted the cache and checked the block and rung, sealed the lid with packed snow for a windshade, and set fat to render into tins. Tea boiled on the stove to save the alcohol burner for travel. We scraped runners, warmed them with cloth, and hung mitts on a drying line with spacer sticks. The mare took a warm mash. After 15 minutes, we checked blanket straps for rub. Rifles stood with bolts open and a chamber flag in. We logged the day's cost. One ruined runner, a broken strap, a few blanched fingertips, and the winter steadied by what we brought home. We stacked fresh wood by the doors, hung gear to dry, and set a pan of snow to melt for the night. The house held a quiet heat. Tomorrow's plan sat ready in simple steps.